Hello there, Michelle Short here and welcome to another Hero Arts video. Today I'm going to be sharing a card using the A Bit of Kindness Fancy die. To start off my card I'm going to be using the heart pattern bold prints. I'm just taking off the backing sheet and adding that into my MISTI. I want to create a whole background piece using this background stamp. So I'm just adding that into the MISTI and removing the extra foam piece. And then I've got a piece of watercolor cardstock here and I just want to make sure that I know where I'm going to put it so that the background stamp covers it. And then I'm taking an anti-static tool and just running that over the piece of cardstock. And then I'm going to ink up my stamp with Versamark ink. I'm just making sure that I'm really inking that up well because the cardstock that I'm using has got a texture to it, and so I want to make sure that I get every little piece of ink onto there. Pressing down really well onto the MISTI, and then I've got a coffee filter here and some clear embossing powder, and I'm just going to completely cover that panel of cardstock with the embossing powder. And then I can just tap off any excess, and then I can funnel the rest of the embossing powder back into the jar. I've placed the panel onto a heat-proof board, and then I'm just going to use my heat tool just to heat up that embossing powder. Just making sure that I'm catching every little bit of that. And here I've got my Gansai Tambi paints, and I'm just going to pick out some colours. So I'm going to be using a pink, and then a sort of purpley pink or a pinky purpley kind of colour, and then also a purple colour as well. So I have a water tub here and then also a really large paintbrush. This is just a large flat paintbrush, and I'm going to cover the panel of cardstock, the watercolour piece, with some water to start with. I like to do that, it helps the colours blend together, I think. Just adding a little bit of water into those pans of watercolour, and then I'm going to take that pink colour to start with, and then I'm going to add that onto the top. As you can see, I'm not being very neat with this, and then I'm taking that mid-tone colour and just adding that into the middle, and then I'm going to take the purple and add that to the bottom. And then I'm just going to go in with a little bit of extra water and a little bit more of the paint just to make sure that they blend into the places that I've added the colours together, just so that they transition nicely. And then I'm going to set that aside to air dry. While that piece is drying, I'm going to work on my sentiment for the card, and I'm using the A Bit of Kindness Fancy die. Hero Arts donates 25% of the profits from these products to the Kind campaign to help end bullying. So when you buy the products, not only are you going to be enjoying some great products, but you're also going to be doing some good as well, which is excellent. So I've just cut that from some white cardstock, and I did find that in my die cutting machine it did stick into the die, the cardstock, so I just carefully made sure to peel that out, and then I die cut that another 2 times to create 3 in total. I've taken one of the die cuts and I'm just placing that back into the die because I want to add some layers on top, so I'm going to do 3 layers deep. So I'm adding some glue onto the back of the letters, and then I can add another one on top. The reason I'm adding it into the die is so that in case anything sort of goes a little bit skew-whiff, so it's not completely straight, you are going to notice it. So I want to make sure that they are straight. I do find that that happens sometimes with these intricate dies. And once you kind of get 2 layers on, it's a little bit more stable, and it tends to sort of move around less than it would do with just the 1 layer. So just popping that in, I have to be honest, I did push a little bit hard, so it was a little bit more difficult for me to get out of the die again, but just carefully removed that again with a pokey tool. And then once I had the 2 layers on, I just added another layer on top, again with the glue pen. So here I've got my watercolour piece that is now dried, and I'm just taking a baby wipe that is almost completely dry. There is still a little bit of moisture in there, and I'm just running that over the panel mainly over the embossed piece. I used clear embossing powder and obviously heat set that, and because it's clear, it does tend to stain a little bit with the colours that I particularly used. I used staining watercolours here. I didn't mind that at all, but if you wanted a little bit more of a stark white finish, then I'd probably suggest using the white embossing powder instead of the clear. But like I said, I didn't mind the effect of that at all. So just running that over, and then I can take that piece and run it through my die cutting machine, and I'm cutting it out with one of the rectangle infinity dies. I'm using the second to largest size, and that helps to flatten out the piece and also give it a nice finishing edge. And then I'm going to run a piece of vellum through with the oval infinity dies. Next I've got my panel here, and I'm just going to add some adhesive onto the back of that. I'm being quite liberal with my adhesive because it did warp a little bit. Although the die cutting flattened it out, I do like to add quite a bit of adhesive onto the back. Just placing that down onto an A2 sized card base. And then because I've taken all of the time to make sure that the sentiment is straight, I then want to add it onto my card straight as well. So I'm going to be using a bit of Glad Press and Seal. I'm just sticking that down and then making sure that my words are straight. And then I can add a little bit of glue onto the back of that. And I'm using multimedia matte with a precision tool on the top, just to add little dabs of glue onto the back of that word. And then I can press that down onto my vellum oval. Once I've pressed that down, I can remove the press and seal. And then I'm just going to stick an acrylic block onto it just to make sure that that glue adheres down well onto the vellum. And then I can just add some glue onto the back of the vellum underneath the die cut words, and then place that down onto my card. And then I did add some clear gemstones onto that, but I do apologise, for some reason I managed to miss that off camera. So that's the card finished for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching. Links to the products that I used will be over on the Hero Arts blog post, and I will have a link to that down in the description bar on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.